Worries.
Okay. So, and just to introduce, Destiny is with admissions at KGI, and she's going to join us today and then be willing to help and help facilitate any interactions with applicants and so forth. Okay, so to start with here, want to just mention that the mission here is that we work with a select group of students at the PhD level in applied life sciences, applied biosciences, and the goal is for them to use interdisciplinary tools and approaches to solve problems in the life sciences, to translate that knowledge and to be for beneficial applications and advance new horizons in the applied biosciences. That said, so there's this applied nature of our PhD program, and we'll talk quite a bit about that applied nature. We still expect the PhD program, as PhD programs all over the world do, PhD students add knowledge to the knowledge of humanity. So the goal is to add knowledge in the form of publications. Their dissertation that they write is their primary summary of the PhD work that demonstrates that there's been new information added to the world's knowledge base. And so that's the exciting thing. And I think to emphasize that the PhD is sort of the terminal, most advanced degree that you can get in the sciences. Because beyond that, people will go and they'll go to work, but and in some cases they'll do what's called a postdoc or a postdoctoral fellowship. But postdocs, you don't get a degree for that. And so the most advanced degree in the sciences is the Doctor of Philosophy degree. And with that, the name philosophy is important because philosophy implies that you have a love of knowledge and that you're seeking to add new knowledge to the world. And so the idea of philosophy is that you're putting into context this knowledge in a way that you think deeply about it, but it's also how it impacts the rest of the world and what the applications might be of the knowledge that you discover. So, as I said, it's a 3-year program. It's really designed to prepare students to go into R&D environments. And that can be in a variety of bioscience industries. It can be in national laboratories or research institutions of various forms that you find around the world. There are various institutions that are sometimes they're governmental, national laboratories in some places, but there are also research consortia that may be funded by industry consortia of some sort. And around the world, there are also sort of translational development institutions, such as the Fraunhofer Institutes in Germany, where there's researchers working closely with people in industry to spin out and develop and launch new industries or new products and new companies and new industries. So those are the kinds of places that our graduates go to work. Some go into academia. Many PhD programs, the idea is to sort of prepare faculty, future faculty. KGI is not focused on that. It's possible that our students go on to academia and become professors somewhere, but that's not the primary expectation. Most of our graduates go to industry. So they go into R&D, research and development in industry. The second bullet here is about knowing the science and business and even regulatory aspects of the bioscience industry, so that they they come out with a sort of a unique characteristic in the pool of PhD graduates each year. Our graduates are recognized for being applied and understanding the business and regulatory context of the PhD. Now, that's not to say that the PhD has very much content or coursework in business. I'll get to the coursework later. Business and regulatory affairs are not emphasized, but there's some expectation that you would have gained already some experience with that at the master's level, so that when you're working on your PhD, you're prepared to think about the implications of the PhD science work on the industry and in the context of the environment that the science is being applied to. Using interdisciplinary approaches to translate the knowledge and advance new horizons. So that's sort of the elevator pitch for our program, and what distinguishes it perhaps from other PhDs that may be have even more science focused without necessarily getting exposure or spending substantial time on what we call transferable skills. And we have some requirements in our program that are referred to as transferable skills. Our program has a set of learning outcomes, and many of these are the same as our own master's programs at KGI, but then some build on that to be only really focused on at the PhD level. So this idea of applying research methodologies for original, independent, applied biosciences. So it does have to be original and it has to be independent. Now, science is more team-based than ever. So you're typically in a laboratory environment where there are other students or postdocs or your advisor who are helping and sometimes doing very complementary parallel research as your own work as a PhD student. And then papers that get published in the literature will often have, many co-authors on them. And even your own PhD work will have co-authors on the papers. But there's the committee, the PhD committee that assesses the work of a PhD student looks for original independent contributions. And so there is ultimately a dissertation that's a single author on it. And that dissertation is the PhD student's cumulative work that is original and independent. You see these others are about communication, integrating fundamentals of computational, there's a typo here, engineering, design, biomolecular technologies to solve real problems, business management, and that can kind of include regulatory environments with the FDA for if there's something that's regulated by the FDA that's involved in the student's PhD work. Developing a broad understanding, but also mastery. And it's sort of this mastery that warrants the title PhD. Again, with a focus on original research. Something about the translation, commercialization, understanding the impact of the science on the world. And then finally, ethics. We have ethics courses required at the master's level. And then during the PhD program, we have opportunities for students to explore application of ethical principles in bioethics, bioindustry ethics, and biomedical ethics, and responsible conduct of research, sort of the ethics associated with publications and authorship, ensuring there's not plagiarism and that sort of thing. So there's a variety of ethical principles that really apply in the life sciences. So our program, to just briefly go over the three methods or tracks that you can go into at KGI. The first is what we call a traditional or faculty-sponsored track, where there is a principal investigator, a faculty member at KGI who has some funds to help fund a PhD student for 3 years. And this, they work at KGI in our labs. They may visit other labs as well at times, in collaborations with others, but typically these students are on KGI on KGI premises in labs here, and basically working for a faculty advisor who is the mentor. The PhD is an apprenticeship type program. It's historically been like an apprenticeship. The main person in your life, other than family and best friends and so forth, the main person in your work life during your PhD studies is your PhD advisor. Sometimes that gets delegated in some way to a postdoc who you work really closely with, or another PhD student. But the advisor is the one who ultimately has to say that, yes, you've done enough work to warrant a PhD, you've published papers, I will vouch for you being a PhD, I'll sign the papers saying that you'll be a PhD when you finish. And there is a committee, there is a PhD committee that ultimately has to approve the dissertation and the presentations, but the faculty advisor is the chair of that committee. And typically, you will not get a PhD unless you have the support of the faculty advisor. The faculty advisor is a member of the committee and chairs the committee, and so they need to support you getting the PhD. So that's very much an apprenticeship model to think about. Sometimes students are surprised by that, but please come into the PhD program eyes wide open, recognizing that the PhD advisor is sort of the main person telling you whether your topics and studies are proceeding appropriately, whether your work is substantial enough to warrant a PhD. We have these two industry-involved tracks. The first is industry-sponsored, where industry gives the KGI advisor money in the form of a grant or a contract to do research, and the PhD student is supported under that. The student can, if it's industry-sponsored, conduct some studies at the company site as well, and then periodically visit KGI. But this is actually, I think, sort of misrepresents it. It's usually the other way around. The faculty, the student, if it's industry sponsored, will usually do the work at KGI in a lab here and periodically visit the company. So we did have a version of this where it was most of the time at the company and then periodically visiting KGI, but usually today it's the other way around. The student conducts studies at KGI for the most part and then may visit a company. But we do have this relatively new track, which is called industry hosted. So one possibility for KGI, mostly for KGI master's students, is to go get a job in industry. And then as an alumnus in industry, they're working a research and development job. And if they can get support from the company to work on a 3-year project, they can then apply for KGI's PhD program, assemble a committee of faculty and somebody from the company to supervise a PhD project. And so this is called industry hosted. And this is the version which is almost all at the company with very little expectation, if any, that the student ever come to KGI. Certainly welcome to come to KGI, and if the KGI faculty advisor and the committee have some equipment or some instruments that your research could benefit from using periodically, then it might make sense for an industry hosted student to come to KGI. But we have a handful of students in this who started this year in this program, where the students are working at a biotech or pharma company, and they do their work at the company site and periodically visit KGI. And so there is an industry research supervisor, but there is a KGI faculty advisor who is ultimately the chair of the committee. So here are some of the people. We have a nice support cast, an infrastructure to support our PhD students. As I said, it's primarily the PI and the research group of the faculty advisor, but there are these others involved. I'm involved to make sure the program is kind of running and the admission cycle and the milestones are being met. Professor Schlappe teaches one of the only real didactic course that's required for the PhD. This is what's essentially a half course each semester during all of the PhD studies. And it's mainly a seminar course where there's an hour-long presentation by faculty and researchers from around the world. During COVID and post-COVID, we can't really use that term. It's not really post-COVID, but during COVID and what we thought was post-COVID and times now, we have Zoom, and we use Zoom to have these seminars every Friday. And we have great researchers from around the world who will present their work, people from industry, people from academia, and people from other kinds of laboratories. And so that Travis Schlappe runs that course, teaches that course. And that includes some, I'll get to it later, but it includes some ethics topics as well. So there's opportunity for sort of practicing bioethical principles. We have an administrative coordinator, folks in student affairs, our dean of schools, dean of research, Jane Rosenthal. I should have had admissions on here as well, but once you're in the program, you don't necessarily spend time talking to Destiny very much. But Destiny's here today, and admissions is certainly part of the team that is involved in running the whole PhD program. So the curriculum has these two topics, two courses. One is this course that we call ALS 504 that is simply your main research work and documenting the milestones that you have to complete. And so it's not really a course that meets at a regular time or anything. It's mainly that when you achieve one of the milestones of the program, that you work with me and Kathy to document that, and then this course then shows that you're passing the PhD program as you pass those milestones in each semester. ALS 503 is that current topics in applied life sciences and ethics that I mentioned that Professor Schlappe runs. And so that's 1.5 units per semester. So this is 15 units per semester for what's typically 6 semesters plus 2 summers. So the graduation requirements, actually I can stop there. Are there any questions that you have about this coursework? Sometimes students take other courses as an elective if their advisor thinks they need it, if their advisor and the committee thinks they need it. So sometimes you would add on another 3-credit course 1 semester, or a 1.5 credit elective that might be a half course somewhere in our curriculum if the advisor thinks that the student can benefit from it and the student wants to do it. So that's something that you discuss with your advisor is, do I take some other classes as well? We typically think that you've taken a lot of classes at the master's level. And so you typically have taken the didactic coursework you need, and that we don't offer or expect you to take other coursework during these 3 years. Okay. So the milestones, what do you have to do during the program? This is our current list. It's kind of simplified just to be short here and show you exactly what you have to do. You have to identify a thesis committee. So you work with your advisor to pick other faculty members and somebody from the outside of KGI. There's a requirement that at least one of the committee members be from outside of KGI as well. And so you submit this within 3 months of starting the program. And then you spend the first semester doing literature review, reading the literature, going to the scientific journals, and making sure you know the state of the knowledge in the field that you're studying. And then on your dissertation topic, your research topic, you know the background. So you don't reinvent the wheel. You're going to start with a base of knowledge, and then you're going to give this literature mastery seminar on your research topic, showing that you really know the state of the art. Destiny, did you have something to say? No, okay. I see a yellow frame around your window, so I thought maybe you were trying to say something.
No, you're good. Thank you, though, Dr. Sterling.
Okay. So that's the first semester. Second semester, we have a research symposium in January every year, where the PhD students are required to give a presentation on the status of their work. And for the first year and the second year, that's a poster presentation showing the status of their work. Then at the end of the second semester is the big qualifiers, the quals. And this is a dissertation progress presentation to the committee. And it requires a written report be given to the committee and then a presentation to the committee. And so that's a big hurdle. And that's a point where really we decide whether the student has the wherewithal, has the ability, and is going to be able to do a PhD. So that's sort of the big hurdle at the end of the first year. So yeah, that's called the qualifiers. And then during the summer and first semester of the second year, you work with your advisor, you get as much research done as you can, and hopefully you prepare something that could result in a publication in a journal. And you talk with your advisor about that during the summer and this first semester. In the second year, in the second semester, there are these 3 requirements then. So you go to the research symposium and give a poster again. You do a graduate student literature seminar, but now it's on a topic that's a proposal that you're not going to actually work on. So you're going to give a seminar and you're going to summarize a bunch of knowledge on a topic that you might work with your advisor to submit proposals to recruit another student to come in and do work. But it's called transferable skills because this is on a topic that is not your research specifically. It's in the same field, and it might be something that you would do if you had more time to do your own research, right? If you moved on to a postdoc, for example, or if you had the freedom to pursue research that you wanted to pursue after your PhD, this literature seminar, the literature you study for this would support a transferable skills proposal, which then comes later. And you'll see that in the next summer. And And then you give another dissertation progress presentation to the committee. And this is typically a written report in a peer-reviewed journal format now, because you've had a whole year to get a lot of work done, get a lot of research done, and you're going to submit this to the written report to the committee. And then this isn't really a qualifiers at this point. It's more like a progress report that you give to the committee. The next summer, that transferable skills topic that you studied, you turn it into a business plan or research proposal. So it's in the field, but outside your dissertation topic. And the committee has to assess that your ability to not just do your own research, but to propose something outside of your research that could be a new project later on, for example. And then in the first semester of the third year, hopefully you can get a draft manuscript published. You can submit it. So it can be a publication draft manuscript, or you could actually have one published. The goal is to try to get something published by then. And then in the second semester, you give an oral podium presentation this year because it's your final year. You give a dissertation draft by April 7th. You have your dissertation defense before the end of the year. And then that approval gets documented and signed by all committee members. And then you are doctor. People will call you doctor. Okay, so that's it. Any questions about this sequence of milestones? So Ijeoma is in her first year here. So she's working on this stuff, trying to get ready for her literature mastery and hopefully putting that committee in place. So she can comment on that at the end if you want. You could ask her what it's been like up to this point. So then, whoops. Yeah, so the target students, who are we looking for? We require a master's degree with coursework in a relevant field with at least 48 credits from an accredited institution. This 48 credits is a pretty heavy load, pretty heavy master's. It's not just a coursework only master's. It usually requires a master's with a thesis option or a master's that with an internship at a company. Some professional master's degrees will reach this threshold. If you don't have a master's with that threshold, you would need a petition of some sort to waive that requirement or find other coursework during the PhD study that would bring you up to that. And it's rare. We've only had a couple of students do this who come in with a master's degree with less than 48 units. And you sort of have to fill out a petition to if you don't have that 48. And we don't really encourage students to apply unless they have that. But if they really want to apply and they don't have the 48, and then in different international systems, 48 credits might mean different things. And so it's worth a discussion with the admissions team and with me. We can work together to determine whether you meet that requirement or whether you would need to make up a little bit of requirement for that. You know, in the US, a lot of master's degrees are 30 credits with only coursework. And those simply don't have enough to be considered professional masters with the internship and the experiential learning components. Examples of masters that do have experiential learning might be a master's in genetic counseling or something like that, where there has been the experiential learning, doing genetic counseling work at a hospital somewhere. And if you have a master's degree like that, and then you decide, gosh, I'm really interested in research, you could be a genetic counselor already, but you want to get a PhD, go for a PhD MD PhDs. You know, an MD would clearly, you would have been probably already through a master's, or you would have an MD degree behind you, and that would certainly qualify. A minimum of 3.0 GPA is needed. Candidates should think about identifying a KGI advisor who has funding. And so we don't want faculty to be bombarded by emails, but a single polite inquiry can be acceptable. So you can certainly reach out to our faculty, and at the end of the presentation, you'll see a list of KGI faculty who are actively involved in research and could host PhD students. So that outreach is fine. So taking a look through our webpage, reading some of the professors' publications, understanding what the professor's research is, that you can then really understand what they're doing and see if you're interested in that. If you're there are industry sponsored and industry hosted programs with financial support from the sponsoring company, and it's still important to identify a KGI advisor. Who's going to be the PhD supervisor, KGI advisor, and who would be the PhD supervisor at your company? And for those companies, we put a contract in place with the company. So our corporate partnerships team works with us to put a contract in place that says they're going to support the students for 3 years. There's going to be enough funding to get the student through 3 years. There's a wide variety of research areas, and when you go to the website and you look at the KGI faculty, then the faculty I've listed in particular, and look at their research interests and their publication records, you'll see that many of them fall within one of these areas, sort of drug discovery and development in biotech or pharma, details of mechanisms of disease, and often this is NIH funded by our National Institutes of Health. Sometimes it's NSF funded, or in some cases funded by companies. Medical diagnostics and devices. Sometimes these are students who have more of a bioengineering kind of background. Biomanufacturing here is in the biotech industry. How do you manufacture and scale up? So many of the students in our MEng program at KGI would go through our MEng program and then be sufficiently expert in biomanufacturing to then say, gosh, I could go to a company and work on a PhD while I'm at a company. It could be industry hosted, or a faculty member at KGI might have funding and support PhD work in biomanufacturing. Professor Animesh Ray just got an R01 grant with Professor Jennifer Hernandez, and they work in some systems biology kind of area, but it also relates to mechanisms of disease. So we do have some faculty in systems and comp bio kind of area. So value proposition, you can go to industry, go to government labs or regulatory agencies. You could go, we have PhDs who've gone to the patent and USPTO, US Patent and Trademark Office. So you can work in all kinds of areas. And you can also go to academia and become a professor. The market needs PhD scientists who really understand business with the science and the context of the science. And that's what our master's degrees do a great job of preparing students for. So most of our PhD students are our own master's students who've gone into, who've already got the business and the science at the master's level. And then they really focus more on the science at the PhD level. There's really not many other any other programs that do this quite the way that ours does. I would say that if you're in a laboratory, that's a bit bold to say no program does. I think there may be a professor somewhere who came from industry and is at Harvard and likes to spin out companies and do applied life science research. So you might find particular advisors who could help the students with this, but the program as a whole, PhD programs as a whole, aren't designed the way ours is to provide both of this. If you go to academia, understanding business models, how to do budgeting, it'll put you at an advantage just being able to understand the finances of running an organization, which a lab is an organization. You have a number of people, employees, and so our program can help make sure you're ready to go as a PI if you decide to go to academia. We do make sure our students have stipends. If they're industry hosted and they're working full-time in industry on a PhD effort, they're getting paid plenty of money already, and they don't get a stipend from KGI. And they actually have to pay some tuition. And I'll talk about that a little bit. You're getting this business and market, and while you're conducting the science, we have a very high placement rate for the KGI grads. Once you get a PhD, you will find a way to get good jobs. And in the industry hosted and industry sponsored tracks, it allows you to keep working and get paid in industry if you do those tracks. So our graduates work all over all kinds of different biotech companies, medical device, and research tools. I highlight Illumina here for that, the idea of DNA sequencers and the equipment companies that are developing instrumentation for doing research. There's also good jobs there for our PhD graduates. So the financial support, this version, the KGI advisor pays half and KGI pays half, but the student has to serve as a teaching assistant in classes. And that's a great experience, and it's actually part of most PhD students' lives, is the opportunity to be in the classroom, help teach, or help be a teaching assistant. We anticipate 3 to 4 spots every year under that model. In that model, you're working in the lab of a PI at KGI. The second one is getting full salary support from the PI. We sometimes have students do this, and then there's no TA needed. You don't have to be a TA if you get full salary support for the PI. That's rare, because most PIs have only pay 50% of the tuition and then have KGI pick up the other part, and the student would do a TA. If you have external sponsorship, if a faculty member has it through a grant and it's sponsored by an external entity, tuition comes in from that entity as well. And it has to cover the full student stipend over 3 years. And then the industry hosted model, the KGI covers 50% of the tuition, but the student is actually responsible for 50% of the tuition. Sometimes that the company may pay that, or they may have an educational benefit that covers it. But there's no stipend because you're working in industry making plenty of money already. So we expect that you can afford 50% of the tuition if you want to go that route. In this case, there is a company research supervisor and a KGI faculty advisor, and you agree on a topic ahead of time, and it gets written up in a contract for the 3-year award. So for application, I just wrote down the application requirements from our webpage, and the deadlines. December 15th is a priority deadline, and February 28th is the final deadline. So you can start an application anytime. We have a PhD committee that reviews all the applications. And we make decisions sort of on a rolling basis because we have a monthly PhD committee meeting that I convene, and then we share the application with the committee members so they can weigh in with a vote on whether to accept the students into the program or not. PhD active faculty, this list, I've shared this with Destiny so she can share it with you if you reach out to her. This is just the list of faculty. On the left side are faculty who currently have PhD students at KGI. Some of them have several students. I know Hu Zhang, Sue Behrens, Kiana Iran each have several students. I think Animesh Ray has a couple. Oh, I put Sue Behrens' name down twice here. But yeah, she has several PhD students. Mike Horace is a new faculty member at KGI, but he is interested in growing a research program with PhD students. I may be looking for a student for next year, but I won't know probably until the new year. So there may be sessions where you can come and hear these faculty talk about the students they would like and the topics that they need students to work on. So they're not here today to present any of that, but we'll try to have another opportunity for faculty to present opportunities for their labs. Angelica Neems has had students in the past. John Krastansky runs a lab. Barbara has a lab that she's kind of setting up and getting going. These two faculty or members are in the School of Pharmacy, as is Jennifer Hernandez. The other faculty are in the Riggs School of Applied Life Sciences. Anna Hickerson does medical devices and diagnostics. Angelica Neems is a medical diagnostics professor, as is Travis Schlapp, who does biomedical diagnostics. So with that, well, I didn't realize I would take almost the whole time. I thought I would be done within a half an hour or so. But yeah, if you have any questions, please.
Hi, Dr. Solon.
Hi.
So thank you for this talk. I just actually came in because I wanted to see the list of faculties who are available. And somehow you also touched on this with regards to international students applying for a PhD program. So I have a couple of my friends who are interested in applying to KGI, but I told them that I'm not sure if they will take, because I'm only giving my experience based on I was a master's student here at KGI, but you kind of clarified it. And I believe if they apply, if they meet up the credit load, I think it's going to be possible. So I'm going to encourage them to apply. And then also I wanted to ask, the PhD program, does it only admit during the fall? Do you take admissions in spring?
The industry sponsored and industry hosted, we have had applicants start in January. And those are sort of exceptional cases if somebody's in industry, and that has been only for KGI alumni. So KGI alumni who are in industry and want to pursue the industry hosted model, where they stay working at the company, those we have taken applications during other times in the year, even in the fall semester. But that it's sort of an exception. We would like to see the applications for those programs as well come in by the end of February, so that they can be considered by the PhD committee. But if somebody in industry, the timing needs to be a January start for them, we can consider the application. For people who are going to be on KGI's regular PI funded model with TAs and so forth, we want to have a fall start for those people. So.
Thank you so much. I'll just be hanging around in case anyone has a question for me. That was why. Thank
Okay.
you.
Sure. Hello, Mary.
Hi, Dr. Sterling.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine.
Hi, Miss Alvarez.
Hi, Mary. It's nice to see you again.
Always nice to see you.
So any other questions about the presentation? This should be recorded and the recording could be available. So Ijeoma, for example, if you'd like to share a recording with prospective student, we could do that as well.
Yeah, we would love that. But I wanted to also ask, would there be an event whereby, because this is how I was able to choose my faculty, whereby we have the various faculty members who are looking to recruit, talk about their research. Is that coming up anytime soon?
Yes, so this was a program overview. We're going to schedule, my hope is to have one in November and one in late January or early February. And those will be opportunities for faculty to present their research and tell about the opportunities that are available in their labs. And often when we have those sessions, I spend the first half an hour doing what I did today. And then they rush through and say, my lab does this, 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 and we're looking for somebody. But I'm hoping that the November one and the January one will have a little more time for the faculty, maybe 10 minutes each, and have 6 of them present or something like that. So we'll see who is planning on it. Getting the funding in place is another key. So like for my own lab, I do computational work, so I don't have a physical lab, but that will depend on getting grants. And so I may know in February whether I have a position for the fall. Currently, I don't have a position in my group. I have one PhD student right now, and I've had several master's students working on things in my group. But the PhD student is a joint CGU. He's a CGU student in applied math and does computational work on a funded effort that we got for doing study of glycobiology. So my own research, if I give one of the presentations later, it would be about glycobiology as opposed to nucleic acids or proteins. It's about sugars or carbohydrates.
All right, thank you. The very last question. Are we allowed to, when the invite goes out, are we allowed to invite people who are not here in KGI, like back in Africa? Are we allowed to share that link?
Destiny, is that okay?
Yeah, that should be fine. As long as you're okay with it, Dr. Sterling.
I'm fine with it. You know,
Okay.
what I told you today was just such an overview of our, the bureaucracy, sort of the details of the way our PhD program works, the fact that it's normally a 3-year program after the master's, and it needs to be a hefty master's to get in. It has to be one like our master's degrees, or, a master's in genetic counseling, or one of these kind of professional masters that has internships or a thesis with it. The other thing I would mention is that strong applicants typically do have research experience. So if at all possible, we certainly favor applicants that have some research experience, and better yet, if it's actually resulted in publications. The ability to write or to contribute to science that gets published demonstrates that you have some wherewithal to move into the PhD study. Any other questions? Yeah, Mary.
I have a couple questions. I had lab stuff, so that's why I missed the talk, but I'm planning on doing the one in a few weeks.
Okay. Yeah.
Isn't there also an option if you can't be tied to a grant, and you already know who you might want to work with and a project that you want to work in, can you work with your PI to apply for like NSF grants to fund your PhD?
Yeah, if you're a KGI student, you're welcome to pursue all possibilities like that, and talk to this faculty list and see if there's something you can do now while you're still a master's student, to apply for things, to work together on things, and even do independent research as a class as part of your studies.
Okay, so then just because even if you're not a KGI student, I guess it would apply if you like reach out to different faculties early enough. There
Yeah.
are avenues and not being specifically attached to a grant.
That's right. That's right. One of my slides here today was about reaching out to faculty and talking to a polite inquiry, not pestering them with emails every other day, but a targeted email to faculty saying, I'm interested in your work. Would you have a position available in the lab? Or would you take a student on? Do you anticipate taking students on these topics? If a student comes with their own funding, most faculty will say, I would love to have you working on the topics that I'm working on.
Okay.
And so there are fellowships available, and it's worth looking for PhD fellowships through foundations, and there are lists online. One of the most prestigious of those, there are two that are quite competitive and prestigious. One is an NSF graduate fellowship, and if you can get one of those through the National Science Foundation, it's specifically for students who want to go pursue a PhD, and then they have that. If they win that, they take that money and with them basically. Another is the Hertz Fellowship, Hertz Foundation, and that's a very prestigious one. It's difficult for me to recommend pursuing that unless the student has a background that is essentially impeccable because it's so competitive. If you look at the list of the Hertz Fellowship winners, they're almost all from quite prestigious institutions with very high grades. Nonetheless, that doesn't mean it's not possible. It's just very competitive. So if you can get your own money, then you can basically write your own ticket, because faculty would love to have students who come with their own funding. So yeah, Mary, I'm sorry you weren't able to attend from the beginning, but we will do the folks attended this time, and then send out an email like we did today for the next event, when I can get together with Destiny to schedule a time and then work with faculty who are interested in participating. We'll just have the next session be, here's what my lab does, and here's what I think I need a PhD student for. And then in some cases they may say, I don't have funding yet, like I did. I don't have funding right now, but I might give a presentation, and then if I do get funding, then at least students will be aware of what I'm working on.
That makes sense. Yeah. Cool. I mean, and we've already talked about this offline a few times in passing. So.
Yeah. Okay, so somebody put in the chat box that they oh, Destiny, you've been responding. Okay, so okay, so email. You can email Destiny, and she can then forward the recording link and information about the next session that we'll have for talking about having the faculty talk about their research. Okay, anything else? I see a couple of folks came on late, so yeah, I would encourage you to just go back and watch the video, and if you get a copy of the PowerPoint, then you'll have that list of faculty who are research active. There may be some other faculty that are research active that I don't have on this list. This list was, the current ones were in the left column, the current PhD advisors. And then I added some who I know are interested. There may be some others as well. So going through KGI's list of faculty and kind of meticulously looking in different areas. The two departments are the Biological Engineering and Management Department and the Department of Pharmaceutical and Life Sciences Department. So it's called BEAM and PALS. Those are the two faculty in those departments have, many of them have active research programs going on.
Which programs are the diagnostic labs in?
The diagnostics is all in BEAM.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah, biological and biological engineering and management.
Okay.
That's a little bit of a, that there are faculty in the BEAM department who have research programs, who have PhD students who didn't go through an engineering degree. We offer 2 engineering master's degrees at KGI, but students who come through our MS program can also apply, or students in our genomic data analytics master's degree could also apply for positions in the BEAM with faculty who do diagnostics. So diagnostics requires some engineering, but it also can, students who come from a biology or chemistry background can do fine in the labs that are doing DNA diagnostics or some kind of protein or glycan diagnostics.
Okay. Half of the PIs for diagnostics have a chemistry background.
Yeah, exactly. For some of those who are interested, this is KGI is a relatively small place. We have 19 PhD students in the program. As the program director, I'd like to see that get to 25 or 30. So we'd like to grow the PhD program, create more camaraderie among the PhD students. We have a club called PH Defense. It's a student club, and they have a small budget to do social activities, and they are, so far it looks like many of their social things might be after the Friday seminar. So at Friday at noon we have a scientific seminar. All students are welcome to go to that, and our PhD students are required to go to that Friday noon, and then after that we anticipate that there will be food available and gathering and time for socializing and getting to know other PhD students. We haven't done it yet because we just haven't reserved. We have to eat outdoors because of COVID. We can't reserve a room and have a big meal indoors right now. So we're planning to use the tables outside, and it's starting to get cold, but Southern California is never that cold, so it can be pretty chilly at times, and it can rain. And then also, I think, Destiny, some of those rules are gradually being relaxed, and so we will be having some events in the larger classrooms where there can be some social distancing and some food in the rooms. But I think 2 things to leave you with. I think being a PhD student is a great time in life. You get to really pursue research in a deep way. you don't have much coursework to worry about. The other thing is that you can make a huge impact on the world, and it can be really, it's really a noble endeavor. There's greatness associated with discovering new knowledge. It's truly a great thing to do. When you add knowledge to humanity and you publish that, it's documented in a way that people all over the world forevermore can go and find that and say, wow, somebody back then right there discovered that, and I'm going to use that and leverage that to discover even more and greater things. So I want to leave you with the idea that yes, the PhD is a grand, noble, I would even say moral kind of endeavor. Adding knowledge to humanity is incredible and rewarding. So I hope to see some of you at the future events as well. Okay, thank you for coming.
What room are the Friday workshops in, or is it on Zoom?
It's in 109 in 535. And usually Kathy McNevin announces those, and there's an announcement for them.
And that's different from like the Great Speaker, right? Series, like the speaker series, it's different, right?
It's not an industry speaker series.
Okay.
It's the PhD science seminar series. It's Fridays at noon. We had a speaker from Wisconsin, Catalent Technologies, talking about mass spectrometry and all the glycosylation of monoclonal antibody therapies.
That's so cool.
It was amazing. Yeah, really knowledgeable guy.
Why am I just now learning about these workshops?
Yeah, Fridays at noon. Thanks for your enthusiasm. Okay, see everybody later. Thank you, Destiny, for staying for this.
Thank you, Dr. Sterling. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.